It's a gorgeous day out. It's gonna be in the 70s today. So I figured I would sit here with the doors open to the studio and make my transition. I see that I kind of want to do my own personal review of my own product. I'm going to do a review of this Fruit of Life Cycle book. This is the first one that I've done as this little tiny version, and I kind of want to share my thoughts so I can kind of go back over it and see what sort of refinements that I'm going to do going forward. So I just want to point out that the Fruit of Life Cycle is something that I've been doing with the Quantum Memoir for the last few years. I use this process to use as a template for my solar cycle for the 12 months of a year. And then I also use it as a template for the lunar cycle, the 28-30 days of a month, correct? And then I also use it as a template for my daily kind of like meditation or affirmation, kind of a program that I'm gonna take with me through the day and then through the night. So it's just the Quantum Memoir, and I customize it in a cycle of time that is either a year, a season, a month, a week, you know, a lunar phase, a day, whatever cycle of time that I want to process. You know, it could be longer spans of time, like 3 years or 10 years also, if I wanted to go there, which I probably will at some point. So I have this Fruit of Life Cycle that I've been doing for a couple years, and I used to do it in a large format, in a big book, to where my sheets were full-size sheets. And then I decided that I wanted it to be a little bit more handy so that I could just throw it in my bag and take it along with me. But with that, the solar cycle, I still like to do it on a large sheet of paper so I can have the full year laid out. And so why I'm pointing that out, it's the first cycle in this book, in this Fruit of Life Cycle. So you can see it's much smaller. So what I did is last December, I created this large kind of spread, a projection for my year for 2021. And then I just condensed those notions into this little booklet. And I carried that with me through my, each month through the season. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of break this down of how I went about it. So let's just take a pause and start fresh. So now that this fall season is over and the year is ending and I'm planning a new cycle of a season, a lunar month of December, and a year, then I'm going to start with this new blank book that I've done. And in this case, I've made some refinements from here, so there's some differences. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the very beginning of how I'm going to approach filling in this Fruit of Life Cycle. And the reason that I share these sorts of transparencies of like my homework of like what I'm doing is because I'm hoping that for yourself, there's something that you love that you want to create, that you don't feel like you have to like knock it out of the park the first time and everything has to be perfect before you share it. I find personally that another way to do it is to go ahead and exercise it, to make something and recognize it could be temporary and there could be improvements, and then just continuously always refining whatever my product or my project, my craft is. So while I could give you the example of how to use this book, this video also applies to the idea of if you're creating something that you just keep going through cycles of time and making adjustments to it and let new information come in to make it greater or grander than it was when you started. So this for me is an evolution of my practice, my Quantum Memoir practice, but also my perception of how I live through time. So what I'm going to do right now is that we're approaching a new moon for December. I'm starting with a whole new, I've started this last December, so I'm complete in my solar cycle. This solar cycle has now closed for me as of this new moon, which is just in a couple days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this template updated for the solar cycle. And you can get this on the Quantum Memoir website for free. You can download and print this large format template off yourself if you want to create a projection, kind of like a roadmap to what you might encounter for 2022. So you could go ahead and do this. And I'm going to do this at this time because I use this sphere as December. So you'll see that in the back of this book, if you get this little booklet that I make, I have a codex. And this is sort of how I perceive the time cycle of the Fruit of Life, how I use it with the Quantum Memoir. So I'm starting, because I started in December for this year, I'm ready to start a new Fruit of Life cycle. You know, my new year's not necessarily in January, it's in December. So I'm starting this new projection. So I'm going to go ahead and use the blown up version, the large version, and I'm going to create that projection all at one time. And I'm going to use tarot to do that. And I'll make a different video of how I actually fill it in. But I just want to share that I fill this in now, and then this will stay up front and center throughout my entire year of 2022 so that I always see it. But I'm going to make a condensed kind of potent version of that and put it in this booklet that I carry around with me every day. So while this might be posted up in my studio somewhere, this is the thing that I'm actually, when I'm doing my daily practice, I'm also reviewing what my projection is for the year, the upcoming months or moons that are going to be ahead of me, so that I can kind of set goals around that cycle of time. So then just to recap, the first cycle of time in this Fruit of Life cycle that I do is the solar cycle. And you can start this at any month that you want to, and you can label these in any order that you'd like to. But I do have kind of a guide of how I do it laid out if you want a suggestion. And the additional change that I'm making to this is that I'm no longer going to see, let me say that again. In the past, I've seen the seasons in quarters, right? So you have 4 quarters, which is 3 months or 3 moon cycles, and that makes up a season. And that works out, that is an answer, but it's not necessarily a specific truth. It's just a concept that I can play with. So since, you know, I'm doing the quarters, it doesn't necessarily work out with the fractals. You know, spring ends up being 4 spheres where summer is just 2 spheres, where there's not a specific problem with that, but that kind of molds me into one perspective. So what I'm going to play with this time in this season that I'm approaching is that my seasons are no longer going to be looked at as in blocks of 3 in quarters, right? So I'm going to have my season just be these 2 spheres. So if I don't lose you, imagine instead of 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, I'm going to have 6 seasons, and my season consists of 2 months. This is a much easier time frame for me to set goals around than adding a 3rd month. That starts to be just too much, and it even seems imbalanced in the practice that I do, that it's kind of like off here and molded with the next season. So what I'm going to do is my season is going to be December and January. So this book will contain my projection for the solar year, but it's also going to have the lunar cycles for December, and then I have each phase, and then I'll have a lunar cycle for January. So I'll just be focusing on one season, which is this ground section. This will just be the season that I'm focusing on right now. And then the next season will be this intention cycle here, which will include February and March. So while I'll observe the winter, you know, solstice and the spring equinox, my cycle of time of how I'm going to set my goals and look at the progression of my days is going to be in sixths. That's hard to say. It's going to be in 2 month sections so that it goes in the flow of the Fruit of Life. And so that will be my experiment for this book. And then at the end of that, this is how I do that refinement. I'll see how that felt. Did I have more success? Was I more in the flow, or was I more off? And then I'll take that and I'll refine it for the next cycle. So then, to do another little recap, you can get this Fruit of Life cycle, you know, booklet that I hand bind. You can get this on my website, or you can just go to the website and download the free template. This is the solar cycle template. So if you want just to download this so you don't have to draw the circles, you can get this for free on the website. And then you can put together your own binder or book. I also have the lunar cycle. So this is a template that has the, a larger version of the one that's in the book. It's the same exact template. You can download this for free and just print this off yourselves. If you like what I'm doing here, you're more than welcome to go ahead and use that. So you can get both the lunar cycle and the solar cycle, or even just a blank one of these to start with to customize it yourself. So now that it's going to be the lunar okay, so there's something else to point out, is in the lunar cycle, I don't say new moon and full moon. So this is just my perception, how I like to play with the words differently so that I can have a different kind of idea around what I'm looking at when I'm looking at these cycles of time. So this is the words that I prefer to use. If you get the template, you can get these templates that are just blank on my website also. So if you want to write in dark or new and full, then you could do that as well. These are just the ones that I prefer. This is the book that I make for me. And then, so the other thing to mention is that we're going into a new moon. So at this time, I'm going to, we're going into the dark phase right now. And that moment when it's going to be at its darkest, at 0%, that new moon, I will set a purpose for this cycle of time. And then as I go through each phase, it's an arm or a fractal, a branch of this fruit of life cycle that will take me through each week of the cycle of the moon, right? So this would be something that takes me a whole month to do. And then a new addition is that I'm going to, instead of just working on one of these for half of the moon cycle, the waxing and then the waning, which is what I was doing, just one sphere a day. And then I decided that what I would like to do is I would like to start doing a message in the morning. I like a little meditation in the morning and get a message. And then I also want to do one at night. So I'm going to start doing 2 spheres a day instead of 1 sphere a day. So there's a few extra pages in this new, Fruit of Life cycle book that includes 4 different, each quarter of the moon. So there's 4 different ones so that I can do 1 arm or fractal a day. 1 in the morning and then 1 at night. So then this will be 7 days. I have 1 to set my purpose, and then I have 6 days to, do my daily messages that will add up to the 1 quarter or a week of the moon cycle. So there might be a day or 2 that I go off because, they're not exactly the same amount of days each moon cycle, but it'll just be a rough estimate. So that'll be enough to keep me in discipline and practice to focus on these kind of know thyself ideas, and then the projections, the dreams and desires that I have to set goals around going in the future. So that's worth pointing out. In these books that I make, in the large ones too, I have this list that I put together for each one of my thought forms. And it's basically what I'm grateful for that day, and then what I might want to be creating, like a to-do list or a manifest list. And then I have a note page here. But I feel like it's really important that along with each one of these thought forms, whether it's the one for the quarter or the one for the lunar cycle or the one for the solar cycle, each one of them have something that goes, as a manifest along with the thought form. So when you're creating this projection for the year, you're also thinking about what are you grateful for, as you go along throughout the year, and what you want to create throughout the year. So this is how it kind of starts to be goal setting. It's not just tracking the cycle of time, it's living within the cycle of time and creating your dreams in a tangible way. If that makes sense, then you might want to get it. Or ask me questions. I'm more than happy to share, my perception and ideas. And I'm hoping that, these are all just inspirations to get you to spark some sort of idea and customize something for yourself that will help you stay disciplined. That's my goal. So thanks for watching.